Welcome to the Great Divorce Podcast, hosted by divorce financial analyst and retirement planning counselor Andrew Hatherley. Join Andrew and guest experts as they help late-life divorcees build the financial and mental foundation for a meaningful future. There is life after divorce. Now, on to the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great Divorce Podcast. My guest today is Melissa Farag. Melissa is a family law mediator and recovering divorce litigator located in California. She has over 10 years' experience helping people settle their family law disputes. She is the founder of High Vibe Mediation, as well as the host of High Vibe Divorce, a podcast that focuses on the transformative power of the divorce experience. Melissa is also a fellow member of the Amicable Divorce Network. Melissa, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew.
Very happy to have you here today, Melissa. So, recovering divorce litigator. I have heard that expression a couple times before, actually from two ladies who were guests on this podcast. You may know them. Certainly, Tracy Ann Moore Grant, the founder of the Amicable Divorce Network, and a divorce coach out of Illinois, Karen Covey. She refers to herself as a recovering attorney, I think. So I'm curious, what are the roots to that? And I have a feeling that has something to do with you being a mediator now.
Yes, it's definitely referring to me being a mediator and trying to solve problems. As a litigator, I felt like I was encouraged to create more problems and more conflict, whereas a mediator, I get to help people come together. It's both spouses against a problem instead of the spouses against each other. And then an order is just plopped out of the sky, or a strange judge is just saying, here's what your parenting plan is. We get to be part of the solution as a mediator. So I really enjoyed my time as a litigator. I do as little of it as I can at this point, but I love family law. I love working with people going through a challenging time. It's such an interesting area of work, but I love helping people resolve their issues.
Well, mediation is just so much less stressful and less costly to people going through divorce. And when they're making important decisions, they want to be in the right state of mind, and all the anxiety that comes attendant to the litigious process just doesn't help that, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I mean, it's expensive emotionally, mentally, and fiscally. You are just spending so much to get a result that may not be much better if you litigate than if you were to mediate. And I just love mediation, and I can't really stop talking about the benefits about it.
Definitely. And I think one of those benefits, because I've done financial mediations and I've been a mediator where there's two attorneys involved, and it's just empowering for the couple. They're really driving the show. We're acting as facilitators, or at least that's the way I do it. I'm curious about, your approach to mediation, and how does mediation work when you're working with a couple?
So when I am mediating, I'm definitely more of a facilitator. My opinion doesn't matter. And that's why it is so empowering. And on my Instagram, I'm really active there. I post a lot of videos at High Vibe Mediation. And one of my things that I've talked about is that mediation is not for the weak. And I know that some people and some men will say, oh, well, I want to litigate. I want to do the strong move. And really, taking control of your case is to mediate and to be in charge of the negotiation and not handing things away. So when you come to mediation as the mediator, while I have a lot of experience, I am an expert of sorts when it comes to family law. I am a co-parenting specialist. My opinion doesn't matter. So if I don't like your settlement, it doesn't matter. You do what's best for you and your family and what you can live with, and that's what really matters. I have trained with a number of different organizations, and I have recently trained in insight mediation, which changes how I approach mediation now. So insight mediation is a lot about remaining curious, asking questions. It keeps neuroscience at the forefront. A lot of conflict, even in the mediation setting, where there's going to be less conflict than you in if you were in a courtroom, people go into fight or flight and they are defending themselves. And we know this, we've seen this. I'm divorced, you're divorced, Andrew. When we're having conversations about our own cases, we get defensive. And when we have conflict, the science shows that we are trying to defend something that we value. And maybe it's we want to be seen as a good parent in society. We want to be seen as a good person. We want to be seen as generous. And so if someone tells us that our position isn't fair, which is subjective, but if someone says that my position I'm taking isn't fair, I am going to I'm going to feel threatened because I see myself as a fair, generous person. And when you get into that defensive mode, you can't change your mind and gain insight on where the other person is coming from. So this insight mediation training that I recently did, it has changed my process from a procedural standpoint, but it also changes my approach. And as a divorce attorney, my position was really providing answers and really taking control over the process. Whereas an insight mediator, my role is really to ask questions. What do you hope would change for the better if we're able to reach a settlement today? What do you feel threatened by when he proposes X, Y, or Z? You ask questions to not only get insight from the person you're speaking to, but also so that the other spouse can gain insight by listening to the answers.
I love that idea of asking questions, and the idea of control, because I think attorneys, financial advisors, I think we tend to be these A-type personalities who are used to providing solutions and advising people. And I know that when I'm acting as a mediator, and it sounds very much similar to what you're saying, Melissa, is that we we have to put our mediator hats on. We have to get a little zen and just draw back a little bit. And I love this idea that mediation is not for the weak. I think I might title the podcast "Mediation is not for the weak." I love that because yes, it's empowering, but people have to take responsibility, for their divorce. And if we're acting as facilitators, they're going to be more engaged, and they're not just going to be led by the nose by a very dominating or domineering attorney.
100%. And honestly, if you think about it, I mean, think about just in the custody standpoint. I don't know your children. Most of the professionals that you deal with in a divorce don't know your children. So why are you going to have your attorney or your judge that you may only be in front of for 10 minutes make a determination about what schedule is best for your family? You know what's best. And sometimes you have to get your ego out of the way.
Yeah.
Like I was recently working with a couple, and I think they really did, at their heart of hearts, want 50-50. But the dad realized, you know what? It really is better for the children if I do 40% timeshare and 60% of the time the kids are with mom. And I know it was really hard for him, but if you really focus on just what's best for your family, the answers are easier. But if you are just paying somebody to fight as hard as they can just for that piece of the pie chart that's even, it's going to be messy and you may not get the result that's best for your kids anyway.
Well, you said it. I mean, your lives, the parties involved. They know the dynamics of the relationship, and to put it all in the hands of a judge who's had an hour or two to review the details of the case and make the decisions, it's a far more preferable, this insight derived design mediation that you're talking about just seems far more preferable to the litigious process in so many ways.
Well, I definitely think so. And something that's really unique, and I think you've been around enough in mediations that you might have an opinion on this. So, as part of the Insight mediation training, we are encouraged to have 90-minute meetings individually with each spouse at the outset. And it doesn't just have to be in family law, it's used in a lot of different areas, especially employment law. But I meet for 90 minutes with each person before I meet with the parties together. And what that does is it allows me to ask lots of questions, but gives each party an opportunity to build rapport with me, but get everything off their chest.
Yeah.
And they really get their quote unquote day in court that way.
Right.
In
Because literally in court, it doesn't matter. And it's going to,
It doesn't matter. It's probably not, from an evidentiary standpoint, it's not going to be important. A lot of it is going to be hearsay. And in California, we are so impacted in almost every single county. You are lucky if you wait a year, if you might get 10 minutes to speak in front of a judge. And
yeah.
you're just not going to get to do it. So, to a mediator, it's a confidential, privileged setting where you can just kind of unload, share it with me. And the insight process shows that when people are heard, they are more willing to change their minds.
Mm.
So, if you don't allow people to feel heard, they can't change their position. And that I am just finding I've changed this in probably the last 6 months. It is so massively different how people feel once we get through those individual sessions where they've had 90 minutes to let themselves share their feelings, their angst, and then it's so much easier to work jointly with the other parties and get going.
I love the idea of the questions. And one question I always ask when I'm involved in a mediation is what would have to happen throughout the process of this mediation for you to consider this to be a successful process?
Mm. Yeah.
And having laid the groundwork that a divorce settlement is not a win-win situation. It's what's workable. But what would the result be to make it feel like this has been successfully resolved? And of course, throughout the mediation, I'm sure you're probably familiar. I think was it Bill Eddy who wrote the book, So What's Your Proposal?
Yes, I
Yeah.
love Bill Eddy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every time I'm asked by attorneys to come and do a financial mediation, I skim that book and all the paragraphs that I've underlined or highlighted, and I remember. So Don, what would you suggest? When someone's getting irate, or so what's your proposal? And of course, there's about 8 different ways of phrasing that. Do you find yourself using phrases like that?
So, Bill Eddy's approach, and we talked about this in my training, is very much for high conflict people, or
Hmm.
HCPs as he calls them.
Right.
And it really works well for them. So, the insight approach is very different. And I do find myself using different skills depending on the situation. And I break my sessions into an hour to 2 hours when we talk about different topics. I work with people over a longer period of time, not just, one 8 hour marathon mediation. I have just found that people can focus on a couple issues and they don't get too exhausted and there's less buyer's remorse. But I will find people can get touchier and more emotional on certain topics. So they may be higher conflict on one day when we're talking about finances, but much more pliable when we're talking about custody or other issues. So I will use the what's your proposal when we have a hotter discussion where talking about the past and maybe some of the hurts isn't going to be as helpful or effective because people are struggling to get past the story they've told themselves about a situation. And they can't just focus on the numbers, which is why I really love having CDFAs involved in my cases because it does help turn down the heat because it's a really you can help people focus on a negotiation and be more
Right.
business-like about the issues where it's just numbers and budgeting and how much do you need and what's the community property value and things like that. It just makes it less emotional. So I am always grateful to people like yourself for helping us out.
No, and I love working with mediators for just that reason. It's it kind of gives you guys the mediator the chance to shine in your area, and we just hopefully we can tee it up with some of the financial work and do some of the digging there to make your job easier. And I found it very fruitful working with working with professionals like you in divorce. I mean, I think we both agree that the team-based approach to divorce is so preferable because we each have our areas of specialization, and I don't go anywhere near the law. Um, I can be a good listener, but I'm not a professional therapist or counselor. And if we have those people involved, I mean, this is quite often the largest financial transaction in a person's life. And you don't want to leave room for error by having your emotions unregulated, for having the attorney not know something about a RSU stock option, or for having a financial advisor think he knows the law.
Exactly. You want to have the right experts in the right position, and you will save money by doing so. And you may not have to expensively undo a mistake down the road if you take the wrong advice. Attorneys, unless they have some special designation or they have done some kind of area of study, attorneys don't have financial experience. They really should not be giving you any financial advice. Attorneys are not therapists, mediators are not therapists. It is a more therapeutic setting than going to court, but we all have our skills. We all have the different things that we're bringing to the table, and we all charge different amounts, whether it's hourly or we have flat rates. If you do it right, you will save a lot of time and money and be informed when you're making really important decisions if you have a really great team.
Yeah.
And I know, especially those of us that are in the amicable divorce network, I think it's great because we see all the time that there are so many different people around the country that have these different roles. And we're encouraged to lean on each other and bring each other into these cases to help our clients amicably and efficiently get through their process.
You know, I agree 100%, Melissa. You mentioned a moment ago about, you don't do these marathon 8-hour mediation sessions. Perhaps you could clarify for our listeners, because there are different types of mediations, and there are those. When I'm working with attorneys, essentially we're at a conference table. I'm at the head of the table, and then the attorneys are on either side of the table with their clients. And we go out of the room to have individual consultations, or we stay in the room, but one party leaves, one party goes. And typically it can go 5 to 8 hours. And fortunately, I haven't been involved in any longer than that, but I've I've heard stories. So how does it work with your mediation logistically? And I know I saw on your website that you're a big proponent of using Zoom.
Right. So I do all of my mediations virtually by Zoom. And so it's actually a lot easier to just break it up into bits and pieces when people are frequently meet when they are at work and they're at during their lunch break and they can just prop up their phone or jump on their laptop. And we will work together for a period of 2 or 3 months. And we will just work over that period of time, systematically going through the issues, focusing on whatever is most, expedient, needs to be addressed. Frequently, it's going to be, child custody issues if there's, younger couple with kids. And then we can go from there. A lot of people, our first sessions will focus on what to do with the marital residence because that's a huge asset for a lot of people, and that's really going to set things up for the rest of the case. But I just do, after those individual 90-minute meetings with the clients, I will then start doing the joint sessions. And so we just do an hour to 2 hours tops and might only focus on one issue, might only spend time talking about spousal support or alimony, child support, things like that. And I find that it's a lot less stressful. People have more energy to really focus on it. And I don't find that people have the buyer's remorse. I mentioned that earlier. When I was litigating and I would be in these situations where there would be these 5, 8, sometimes 10-hour mediations that go all day and everybody is so over the case, they just want to get it all done, people feel really pressured to enter into an agreement. And if you have the mediator and all the attorneys there is this pressure to get everyone signed on the dotted line right then. The way that I do it, people might reach an agreement. I'll send out a memo after, but people have time to consult with their attorneys if they're working with a consulting attorney, and we can come back and put some information into the marital settlement agreement that I've been drafting on their behalf. And it's a longer process, but people feel better about the outcome and it's less stressful and it's not this marathon exhausting ordeal.
Yeah, no, that sounds far preferable to the alternative. But you mentioned you do your mediations on Zoom. You're
Right.
based in Southern California. Are your mediations limited to Southern California?
No, I work with people throughout the state. And if you are
Oh,
working
throughout the
with an
state, but
attorney,
what about outside of the state?
I'm definitely open to working with people outside of California, so long as they have an attorney that can assist them with drafting the documents. I can do term sheets, memorandums of understanding, but I'm not going to draft state-specific paperwork. In California, I do the whole divorce. I do the paperwork. I do the marital settlement agreement, which is the contract between the parties that then becomes a part of the judgment or the divorce decree. So I try to do a full process for them. And but I can definitely work with people hourly, regardless of where they're located.
Well, that's terrific. I know that's good to know. So you mentioned, or I mentioned in your bio from information you gave me about the transformative power of divorce. And I'm curious, you know, what do you mean by the transformative power of the divorce experience? What do you mean by that?
So I have found in my life that really difficult things, adversity, whether it be death, illness, divorce, it changes us and it can really transform us. And it does that by really killing the ego and humbling us. It's a humbling process and it can bring you to your knees. Some people will find that their divorce, it could be the most stressful thing that they ever go through. And depending on your circumstances, that could definitely be the case. My divorce, while it was stressful, we'd been married for 5.5 years. We didn't have children. We didn't own any major property. So we were able to do it on our own. We didn't have to litigate. But I have seen in my about 11 years of working in this field how difficult divorce can be. And I think with anything, if you are open to letting a difficult situation help you grow and become better on the other side, it can be transformative and really positive. But it really takes the right mindset, and you have to be open to taking accountability and something. And you may have noticed this in the divorce podcast space. Some people really like making being divorced and being a victim of divorce their whole personality.
Mhm.
I don't I don't encourage that. It's something you go through. It's not who you are. It changes who you are and how you see the world. But being a victim of divorce, you can be a victim of abuse. You can be a victim of a lot of things. But a victim of a legal process, I don't think I want to hang my hat on that.
No, not at all. I agree with you 100%. And it for me, it was a very transformative experience and humbling, as you said, because I'm a financial advisor and I shouldn't have made, but I didn't know about divorce and divorce finances when I got divorced, and I got taken over by the divorce train, and it developed a momentum of its own. And I look back on it, I made some really dumb mistakes financially, which is humbling to me as a financial advisor, which ultimately inspired me to to focus on this 10 years ago to earn my credentials as a certified divorce financial analyst and start working in this field is to help people not only avoid the dumb mistakes that I made going through divorce, but to understand that there's life after divorce. And it comes from that openness. I think the humbling can lead to an openness where you learn about yourself and you're forced to, rebuild financially and emotionally. And if you're open, it can it can create some tremendous pathways for you. And this whole victimization attitude is just the reverse. There's no growth from feeling, victimized and woe is me and being angry and resentful. You kind of have to take your lumps and realize I'm a human being. I made some mistakes. How can I grow from this experience? And when I determined to help people from their divorce experiences, I went to Toastmasters, which teaches people how to speak in public. And I was always terrified of speaking in public. I think most people are. One of the greatest fears that people have. But that was transformative. Now I'm getting up on stage in front of 50 to 100 people talking about uh, you know th my particular area of expertise, the gray divorce experience. So I understand very much what you're talking about, the transformative aspect of divorce, and I hope our listeners understand that there can be good that comes out of it, that there's going to be suffering in life, and it's how we respond to it. And I don't know if you're familiar with the term post-traumatic growth, but the psychologist Richard Tedeschi has written quite a bit about this. And people really can and do grow from suffering and grow from trauma. Um, you can go down the slippery slope of drugs, alcohol, promiscuity, resentment, but there's another way to deal with it, and that's by trying to understand yourself and adopt some of the tools of the positive psychologists talk about. If anyone's interested, I've done plenty of podcasts on that. But
Well, yeah, and on my podcast, I do have a lot of CDFAs and people that are experts in the divorce field on my podcast, but I also have, spiritual professionals, so people that are like psychic mediums and tarot readers and people that can help you expand your mind and really be creative about how you're going to move through these things. So I think it's really key to have good support during the legal process, during the divorce, and work with people like yourself, Andrew, that have a positive outlook. Because if you are opening yourself up to a financial advisor or CDFA to help you through the process, but they're negative and pessimistic about your possible outcome, it's going to be hard to not victimize yourself. So, working with professionals that are going to build you up during the process, give you realistic, good advice, but not have you believe that you're a victim and everything is terrible. Life is hard. Get a helmet, right? But you can also have, you can be broken open and let some light in and improve and move forward with a better outlook and mindset. And that's what I'm all about. And that's why I love mediation because I feel like it does less harm during the process of divorce. But I know no matter what, if you litigate, if you have a nasty litigated divorce, you have a painful mediation, whatever it is you do, you can have a better life after your divorce, no matter your age. And I actually think people that are going through great divorce sometimes are much better in a much better position to have a good process because by the time you're in your 60s, you've lost a parent probably. You've lost a sibling, you've lost a friend. Something bad has happened to you that you have faced and gotten through. Some younger people, the divorce is the first terrible incident they've ever dealt with. They've never been to war. They've never, there's nothing really bad that's happened to them. It's their first piece of adversity. So if you are older and going through divorce, remember you have survived so much already. You will survive this, and you can set a really good example for people younger than you that are going to be facing divorce. Half of us are going to face it, if not
mhm,
more.
mhm. No, that's a great comment you make, Melissa, about in many cases, some of us older folk have experienced some things, and we may have a little bit more wisdom to bring to the process. Um, of course, we never stop growing, and there's always the
Never.
opportunity at any age, and that's one of the messages I'm trying to get across on the podcast as well. I love the line. You mentioned where the light gets in. I think that was from a Leonard Cohen song, wasn't it? Something like "Look up at the cracks, because that's where the light gets in." It's it's a great way of looking at how we can turn a breakage into a situation where we can grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, really enjoyed chatting with you today, Melissa. If any of our listeners want to connect with you, how do they find you?
So you can find me. I'm really active on Instagram. So I would love for you to find me there at High Vibe Mediation for my mediation practice. I focus on a lot of video content about mediation and divorce. So follow me there to learn more if you're interested in the divorce process. And then also on High Vibe Divorce, that's where my podcast. And I would love you to listen to any episodes if you are interested in, growth through divorce, spirituality, anything like that. We would love to have your listeners over there. And we cater to everyone of all age. So happy to have you.
Terrific, Melissa. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Gray Divorce Podcast. To learn more or get in contact with your host, you can visit Andrew's website at transcendretirement.net. Also, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Information provided is educational only and should not be construed as legal or tax advice. Each situation is unique and should be discussed with your tax or legal advisor prior to implementation. Andrew Hatherley is not an attorney and does not provide legal advice. Information provided is financial in nature. Advisory services offered through Hatherley Capital Management, LLC. Divorce financial analysis services offered through Wiser Divorce Solutions, an affiliated company.